For the past 21 years, El Toro Loco has single-handedly become one of the most recognizable and one of Monster Jam's greatest trucks. It stood the test of time for great reason, for its menacing long horns, the smoke exiting the nostrils, and the amazing and talented drivers that have driven it over the years. You guys have been wanting this video, so today I bring you the evolution of El Toro Loco. Our story begins in 2001, where the truck made its debut. It is important to note that the body is exactly the same as Bulldozer. And speaking of Bulldozer, it would run on Taurus 4, a very prominent chassis which campaigned the names such as NWO, Bulldozer, and would go on to run Bob and Tom and El Toro Loco. The original truck debuted with the chrome wheel covers that NWO had been using and kept the red four-link bars. The truck had plain white horns, a gold tooth, and a bright red paint job with flames adorning the sides. Lupe Souza would compete with the truck throughout the 2001 season. By 2002, Souza would receive a new chassis, that being what was formerly Raging Steel. The truck had also received new horns that featured red tips as opposed to the regular white horns it had been running previously. At this point in time, Souza and the El Toro Loco had started becoming more of a recognizable name, though still not featured anywhere on TV. It wasn't until 2003 where the name would start getting recognition. In 2003, Lupe Souza would continue to drive El Toro Loco on the Raging Steel chassis. While the 2003 season was not televised, Souza competed in numerous shows and had great success, most notably at the second show at the newly built Reliance Stadium in Houston, Texas, where he would go on to take the Double Down win and also won racing in Miami. For the first time in the truck's history and in Souza's career, the duo would be invited to compete in that year's Monster Jam World Finals. Souza would be defeated in round 1 of racing by Carl Van Horn in Blacksmith and end up finishing second after an amazing run that saw him have huge air, a crazy save, and getting the truck stuck at the top of the container. 2004 was the same for Lupe Souza, though he would finally get a televised appearance in Tampa, Florida. In combination to Souza, Rob Nell would occasionally campaign El Toro Loco on the Taurus 4 chassis in places like Hidalgo, Texas, and a number of major League of Monster Truck shows. Once again, Lupe Souza would return to Vegas with El Toro Loco for Monster Jam World Finals 5. He'd once again be defeated in round 1, although this time he'd flip the truck over and almost didn't make it out for freestyle. Fortunately did, and while most of his run was very forgettable, one moment was very much the opposite.
He's getting the fans to stand.
Jimmy Creed's saying, don't do it!
Oh my!
You've got to be kidding me!
After essentially dismantling his truck, he had taken the lead with a score of 31, a score that would only be tied by 2 other people, Medusa and Tom Mentz in Maximum Destruction. To this day, these 3 drivers are the only co-champions in the history of the sport, and in just a span of 3 years, Souza had become world champion. 2005 to 2007 was much of the same for Team El Toro Loco. Souza was now world champion and wanted to defend his world championship with an iron fist. In saying that, Souza would continue to be placed on televised events that featured spectacular moments like his freestyle run from St. Louis of 2006. He would be invited to compete at Monster Jam World Finals 6, 7, and 8. He would not defend his world championship at World Finals 6, would be eliminated in round 2, and finish 22nd in freestyle at World Finals 7, and for World Finals 8, was defeated in round 1 and finished 17th in freestyle. At the end of the 2007 season, Frank Krimmel drove El Toro Loco overseas in places such as Gothenburg, Sweden, and Cardiff, Wales. 2008 was a big year for Monster Jam and a lot of team shakeups would occur. Lupe would continue driving for Team El Toro Loco, debuting the new maroon colored El Toro Loco, though still campaigning it on Rage and Steel. The truck also had new horns, which were yellow and featured more of a flamed pattern across the horns. However, a new driver would join the team for the first quarter, that being the younger brother of Lindsay Wink, Nathan. Nathan Wink would compete throughout the 2008 season. The chassis it ran on is unknown, but some have speculated it was originally a PEI that had the cage modified to fit the El Toro Loco body. Paul Cohen would also briefly campaign El Toro Loco that year. Nathan would compete in numerous televised events, most of which where he came out as a winner. In Orlando and Tampa, he won racing and would put on awesome freestyle runs at virtually every show he competed at. Souza would also be featured at televised events, though not to the extent Nathan was. Ironically though, it would be Souza who would be invited to compete at that year's Monster Jam World Finals. At World Finals 9, he had debuted a new scheme that was different to the design that had been running for the past few years, which would only be run for this year's and next year's Monster Jam World Finals. It had the logo placement changed to more of the rear of the trunk and the new yellow flamed horns. Souza would be defeated in round 1 and would finish 7th in freestyle. In 2009, the truck would change yet again, this time with a new flame pattern on the side of the trunk, and Lupe would go back to driving the regular El Toro Loco. He would drive that regular El Toro Loco on a brand new chassis, that being a Generation 2 PEI that was formerly Bobby Parr's Suzuki. A new driver by the name of Chris Baker would take over for Nathan Wink, who was featured at televised events for most of the year. Lupe Souza would return to the World Finals, defeating the reigning racing champion in round 1, but losing in round 2 to Lindsay Wink. Souza would finish 14th in freestyle. Damon Bradshaw would campaign El Toro Loco overseas in places like Korsau, Poland and Arnhem, Holland. In 2010, another team shakeup occurred in the El Toro Loco camp. Lupe Souza had left the team to drive the new Advanced Auto Parts grinder. With the Safe Auto Minimizer being no more, that left Mark McDonald without a truck. That was until he joined the El Toro Loco team in 2010, driving it on what was formerly his Safe Auto chassis. In addition to this, the Bulldozer name was officially retired, so Chuck Warner would start campaigning El Toro Loco now on his Bulldozer chassis. The truck would receive a new coat of red, that being a reddish-orange color. That's why in some shots it looks red, but in others it looks orange. Confusing, I know, but more importantly, Chris Baker would continue to campaign El Toro Loco for the rest of the year. McDonald would be invited to compete at Monster Jam World Finals 11, where he would qualify fastest out of the 23 other drivers. He looked almost unstoppable. That was until the semi-finals, where Dennis Anderson threw McDonald in a lane he was not familiar with, which may have caused him to crash that saw him being taken out of the freestyle competition. In 2011, McDonald continued using his Safe Auto chassis, but only up until Macon of that year, where he would receive a brand new Generation 1 CRD that he would continue running from there onwards. Joey Parnell took over the duties from Chris Baker, and Baru Musawa made his Monster Jam driving debut in El Toro Loco on the Generation 2 PEI. Warner continued driving El Toro Loco on his former Bulldozer chassis. Mark McDonald was invited to compete at Monster Jam World Finals 12, where he'd make it to round 3 before being defeated by Lindsay Wink and the new Lucas Oil Crusader, and finished 7th in freestyle. For 2012, Baru Musawa left to drive Spider-Man, and Joey Parnell moved to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Former Dragon's Breath driver Becky McDonough joined the team to drive El Toro Loco on Musawa's Gen 2 PEI. Aaron Basil would campaign El Toro Loco, this time on a Racehorse chassis that was originally blacksmith. For Monster Jam World Finals 13, Mark McDonald was invited to compete in the main field, while Becky McDonough would compete in the first ever Young Gun Shootout, where she would be eliminated in the semi-finals. McDonald would end up losing in round 2 to the soon-to-be 10-time world champion Tom Meents and finished 7th in freestyle. In what was almost a repeat of what happened 9 years ago, Mark McDonald would get El Toro Loco stuck in the container in an upright position after McDonald attempted a backflip, which really ended up being a huge sky wheelie. '13 2013 saw some big changes with the designs of the trucks yet again. For starters, 2 new variants would debut: El Toro Loco Yellow, campaigned exclusively by Becky McDonough, and El Toro Loco Black, campaigned exclusively by Mark McDonald. The regular El Toro Loco was campaigned by Aaron Basil and Chuck Warner, still on the same chassis. Once again, McDonald received a main field invitation for Monster Jam World Finals 14, and Becky McDonough competed in the Young Gun Shootout. Unfortunately, McDonough was eliminated in the first round. However, McDonald would qualify 6th fastest and advance all the way to the championship race, and would face off against Adam Anderson in Gravedigger the Legend. Anderson had claimed his first and at that moment only world championship in 2008, but that was a freestyle world championship. He wanted a racing championship, and Mark had never been this close to winning a championship before. So he wanted to claim his first just as badly as Adam did. Unfortunately, McDonald lost to Anderson, albeit in a close battle, and he finished 18th in freestyle. In 2014, Advance Auto Parts had not renewed their partnership with Monster Jam, and Lupe Souza was without a ride. That was until Lupe rejoined Team El Toro Loco, driving the truck on his former Grinder chassis. Aaron Basil would campaign Wolverine instead of El Toro Loco, but Dan Rodoni of the Patriot would campaign it on his chassis. For Monster Jam World Finals 15, Mark McDonald would compete in the main field, and Becky McDonough would compete in the Young Gun Shootout. McDonough would once again lose in round 1, and Mark McDonald would finish 4th in freestyle and was defeated in round 2 of racing. For 2015, McDonough would be invited to compete in the brand new #More Monster Jam series, where she would finish 7th in the series standings. Mark McDonald still drove El Toro Loco Black on various stadium and arena shows in the first quarter. Lupe Souza continued to drive El Toro Loco, and Chuck Warner got a brand new men's chassis as the men's bulldozer that Chuck had been using previously to campaign El Toro Loco had been retired. Chuck Warner competed on the first ever Monster Jam Fox Sports 1 Championship Series, where he ultimately finished 7th. Mark McDonald was invited to compete at Monster Jam World Finals 16, and Becky McDonough would yet again compete in the Young Gun Shootout. McDonough was yet again defeated in round 1, while Mark McDonald advanced to round 3 before being defeated by Damon Bradshaw and finished 7th in freestyle. In 2016, Becky McDonough had retired her old chassis that she had been campaigning since 2012, and was instead gifted a new Cohen chassis. With this, she was invited to compete on that year's Monster Jam Fox Sports 1 Championship Series, where she most notably won donuts at Tampa and Indianapolis. Chuck Warner and Mark McDonald would compete in various non-televised stadium and arena events that year. Lupe Souza had since moved out from the El Toro Loco team to drive El Diablo. However, 3 new rookies debuted on the arena scene driving El Toro Loco. On AMSO East Series, Mark List and Tristan England would co-share their El Toro Loco truck, both driving it on a Gen 2 CRD. Kayla Blood would compete on AMSO West Series, also on a Gen 2 CRD, but this time she drove the yellow El Toro Loco. List and England finished 6th in the East Series standings, and Blood also finished 6th on the Arena West standings. Mark McDonough was invited to compete at the Monster Jam World Finals. However, both McDonough and Blood would compete in the Young Gun Shootout, with McDonough driving the yellow version and Kayla in the regular. Kayla Blood would be eliminated in round 1. However, Becky McDonough would make it to the semi-finals before being defeated by Tyler Menninger in Blue Thunder. In the main field, McDonald lost in round 2 and finished 9th in freestyle. In 2017, Monster Jam had started phasing out the colored El Toro Loco variants. Mark McDonald had ran the black El Toro Loco for a few shows on the FS1 West series that year before returning to the regular El Toro Loco. In saying that, Joe Sylvester would actually run the black El Toro Loco body for the Saudi Arabia show. Chuck Warner drove El Toro Loco on FS1 Series East, where he would complete 2 corkscrews at Indianapolis and Detroit. New to the El Toro Loco team was Armando Castro, who debuted on Triple Threat Series Central on a Gen 2 CRD. McDonald, Warner, and McDonough finished 4th on their tour, while Castro finished 3rd on Triple Threat Central. Blood finished 5th on Triple Threat Series East, and Mark List finished 3rd on Triple Threat Series West. Tristan England now had a full-time ride and drove the new Earthshaker truck on Triple Threat Series East. Mark McDonald and Becky McDonough would be invited to compete in the main field for Monster Jam World Finals 18, while Kayla Blood and Mark List would compete in the Double Down Showdown. Kayla Blood would be eliminated in round 2, while Mark List would make it to the semifinals before being defeated by his former teammate, Tristan England. In racing, Mark McDonald was eliminated in round 2 by Todd LeDuc, and Becky McDonough won her round 1 race, but destroyed the truck in the process, hindering her from moving on in the bracket. In freestyle, McDonald finished 16th and McDonough placed 20th. Near the tail end of 2017, rookie driver Colette Davis drove El Toro Loco at some shows to prepare for the upcoming 2018 season. In 2018, the El Toro Loco team's primary driver, Mark McDonald, had left to drive FS1 Cletus. Becky McDonough competed on Stadium Championship Series 3, Chuck Warner competed on Stadium Championship Series 2, Mark List competed on Triple Threat Series East, Kayla Blood competed on Triple Threat Series Central, and Armando Castro competed on Triple Threat Series West. Macy Nichter would drive El Toro Loco for shows that Kayla Blood was unable to compete in. With the Triple Threat scene having an El Toro Loco for each tour, Colette Davis moved to the Wonder Woman team. Brian Wright would campaign El Toro Loco for Stadium Championship Series 1 on his PEI hook chassis. Armando Castro finished 3rd on Triple Threat West. Kayla Blood and Macy Nichter finished 4th on Triple Threat Central, along with Mark List finishing 4th on Triple Threat East. Becky McDonough finished 5th on Stadium Championship Series 3, Brian Wright finished 11th on Stadium Championship Series 1, and Chuck Warner finished 4th on Stadium Championship Series 2. Becky McDonough would be invited to compete at Monster Jam World Finals 19, with Kayla Blood and Mark List once again competing in the Double Down Showdown. Mark List would be defeated in round 1, and Kayla Blood would be defeated in round 2. Becky McDonough would be eliminated in the first round of racing and finish 15th in freestyle. Mark McDonald would drive El Toro Loco on the overseas tour, and Diesel Dave would drive El Toro Loco in the October Houston show and the December Minneapolis show on a CRD chassis. In 2019, there were more team shakeups for the new year. For starters, Chuck Warner had retired from Monster Jam, and Mark McDonald was now exclusively an overseas driver for the El Toro Loco team. However, with Monster Jam signing a new deal with Spin Master, Hot Wheels had retired at the end of the 2018 season. Scott Buteau would join the team and debut another brand new variant, El Toro Loco Ice. Scott Buteau would be the captain for Team Ice, something that we'll come back to later. For the stadium scene, Scott Buteau would drive El Toro Loco Ice on Stadium Tour 2, Brad Allen would campaign the regular El Toro Loco on the British chassis for Stadium Tour 1, and Becky McDonough competed on Stadium Tour 3, driving El Toro Loco on a Cohen chassis. For arenas, Mark Liss competed on a Triple Threat Series Central with a brand new Cohen chassis, and Armando Castro competed on Triple Threat Series East. New to the team was Elvis Linus, as Caleb Blood would go on to drive Soldier Fortune. Scott Buteau finished 3rd on Stadium Tour 2, Becky McDonough finished 7th on Stadium Tour 3, Elvis Linus finished 5th on Triple Threat West, Mark Liss finished 2nd on Triple Threat Central, and Armando Castro also finished 2nd on Triple Threat Series East. For Monster Jam World Finals 20, there were numerous new competitions, and that gave Team El Toro Loco great chances at winning a championship. Becky McDonough received a main field invitation, Scott Buteau competed in the first ever high jump competition, Armando Castro competed on the first ever two-wheel skills championship, as well as the first ever speedster racing competition. Mark Liss would compete in the Double Down Showdown, as well as both Speedster World Championships and the ATV World Championship. Mark Liss would do quite well in these competitions, but not win any championships or get into the main field. Armando Castro, on the other hand, while finishing 5th in skills, won the first and only Speedster racing competition. Scott Buteau finished 4th in high jump, and for the main field competition, Becky McDonough was eliminated round 1 and finished 13th in freestyle. John Zimmer would drive El Toro Loco at the infamous Manchester show. Now, I mentioned earlier that Scott Buteau was the captain of Team Ice. Well, what does that entail? Well, for the first and currently only All-Star Challenge, Scott Buteau led the charge for Team Ice. Buteau's team was the first to pick when it came to drafting the drivers, and that ultimately led to the team picking a great set of drivers that ultimately netted them the points championship at the end of the weekend. He would defeat Tom Mentz in both racing competitions and lost in round 2 on both nights, finished 20th in freestyle and 14th in the best trick competition. In 2020, Becky McDonough would compete on Stadium Championship Series Red, Scott Buteau continued to campaign on Toro Loco Ice on Stadium Championship Series Yellow, and Kevin Crocker would campaign El Toro Loco for Team Scream on the second Avenger chassis for Stadium Championship Series Green. Armando Castro competed on Triple Threat East, Mark Liss competed on Triple Threat Central, and Elvis Linus competed on Triple Threat West. However, due to the pandemic, all tours with the exception of Triple Threat Series East, as the tour had finished already, was cut short, and thus the leaders of the series, after the cancellations of the tours, were crowned as the series champions. Becky McDonough finished 10th on Stadium Championship Series Red, Kevin Crocker finished 14th on Stadium Championship Series Green, Scott Buteau finished 5th on Stadium Championship Series Yellow, Armando Castro finished 4th on Triple Threat Series East, Mark Liss finished 3rd on Triple Threat Series Central, and Elvis Linus finished 6th on Triple Threat Series West. After the abrupt season cancellation, the truck was put on hiatus until July of 2021. The Los Angeles show at the Staples Center on July 23rd featured the return of numerous fan-favorite trucks like Alien Invasion, Son of a Digger, and of course El Toro Loco. Armando Castro returned to drive the truck, Elvis Linus drove a second Great Clips Mohawk Warrior for 2021, and Becky McDonough and Scott Buteau had not re-signed with Monster Jam. In 2022, the El Toro Loco team was back to full force. Mark Liss returned to drive the truck on Stadium Championship Series Red, and Team Scream driver Craig Champion drove El Toro Loco on the second Avenger chassis for Stadium Championship Series Yellow. For arenas, Armando Castro drove on Arena Championship Series East, and Elvis Linus returned to El Toro Loco on Arena Championship Series Central. Mark Liss drove a Generation 3 CRD, however after a nasty crash in Minneapolis and Detroit, he received a new Cohen chassis that he still runs currently. Craig Champion became a champion in our hearts after his front flip barrel roll attempt in San Diego, and his great season performance throughout the year. Actually, it was really good, like, not even being sarcastic. It was good stuff from the champ. Great champion. Anyway, Mark List finished 6th on Stadium Championship Series Red. Craig Champion finished 10th on Stadium Championship Series Yellow. Armando Castro finished 2nd on Arena Championship Series East. And Elvis Linus finished 3rd on Arena Championship Series Central. Brandon Rassel drove El Toro Loco for Elvis Linus in Toledo. For Monster Jam World Finals 21, Mark List would compete in the main field, and Armando Castro competed in the Skills Championship. Mark List would qualify 6th fastest, was eliminated in round 3, and finished 5th in freestyle. Armando Castro would finish 5th in the Skills Championship. For 2023, Armando Castro will drive El Toro Loco on Arena Championship Series East, and Elvis Linus will compete on Arena Championship Series West. Jamie Garner will drive El Toro Loco on Overboard, and the series he competes in is currently unknown. There is a chance that Team Scream will run El Toro Loco with either Craig Champion or Joe Foley behind the wheel, but this is yet to be confirmed as of writing this video. Mark List also has not been scheduled to drive El Toro Loco for 2023, and is theorized that he might be leaving to drive a Marvel truck. However, once again, this is not confirmed and is just purely speculation. And well, that's the entire evolution of El Toro Loco. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and I'll see you all soon with some more Monster Truck content.